Hello, and welcome. It's season 2 of Super Pros Bros. I'm player 1, Ike, and with me, as always, despite not necessarily wanting to be, is...
What's happening? Player 2, Eli, and Brobati. You know this podcast is on YouTube, SoundCloud, and Spotify.
I did not! Bros of Stalin. Are those the same places they could...
Like,
comment?
share.
And subscribe.
It sure is. It's
Neat!
also where you could, get something to take the edge off there. Fucking crazy pants. Fucking being assaulted by sound over here. Good lord.
Wow! Actually, you just brought that up. I'm gonna look into it later. I saw somebody talking about a side-scrolling, like beat 'em up game where you're like it's a battle of the bands style thing. And it looked really cool. I'll look into it later. It's called Death Bulge Battle of the Bands.
What?
I think
Okay.
it's on Steam. Yeah, it's like $16. It looks fucking cool. Look it up. I'll put a link for y'all to the Steam store in the in the chat, but it's a lot of fun. Uh, but it that's one of the things that's going on in my life this week. That and just being sick. I was supposed to go into work this last Wednesday, and that didn't happen because I got the flu, I think. Just yet another bonus for my co-host here that we're doing the podcast remotely.
Thank God.
Yeah. Other than that, just been playing some Magic Online, watching some anime, starting season 2 of The Bear, and trying to finish Atlanta, but I'm dragging my heels because I don't want to finish it because then when I finish it, it'll be over and I'll be sad. But it's been
I'm
bangers so
excited.
far. It's I don't know, like we should make an episode about that, like finishing your favorite shows when you know it's the last episode. It's whoof. It's a tough pill that you want to swallow, but it's still tough to swallow. Anyway, that's what's been going on with me. What's been going on with you?
So not a whole hell of a lot. So I took Artemis to the airport last week, and so I've been living stag for a week. It's interesting. It's a little bizarre to live alone. Not as bad as I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, maybe because last time I did any proper time living alone was like in college.
Yeah, it's like it's been a minute.
It's been a hot minute since I've lived alone for more than like a night. Actually, I take that back. There was a little bit of time where like Artemis was gone for a couple weeks.
Oh, for like
When she
a
was
start or
when she
whatever.
was at the center, there was like she was gone weekdays basically. She'd come home weekends.
Oh, okay.
So I'd see her like a night, like she'd come back Saturday night and stay Sunday and leave Monday morning. So it ended up playing out.
So
Anyways,
how's this feeling different than then?
I don't know. I'm more comfortable with just kind of being quiet and like walking around and talking to my stupid cats. Um, and the monster that's sitting on my lap has been my alarm clock all week. Because despite having an automatic feeder for the last, I don't know, year, I'm staring at her. She doesn't care. She's just like, human, it's 6 o'clock. Wake up! I'm like, God, Jesus Christ, get out of my face. Except this morning. This morning she let me sleep, and I apparently hibernated. Otherwise, I have been looking forward to say fucking tapping my toes, waiting for the next season of Path of Exile, because Diablo 4 left a bad taste in my mouth. Good lord, those devs are dumb. Oof. I could pop off about those devs and why they're stupid.
Pop off.
All right, Diablo 4's base game is fine. Diablo 4 is like, campaign is okay. It's got a lot of idiot plot moments, but it's got some baller cinematics, so I give it a pass, right? Like, it looks cool, it's serviceable, it's fairly enjoyable. My problem is, if you're gonna claim to be this fucking next generation live service game, you're gonna have these great end game updates, you're gonna have all this shit, you're fucking talking up all your seasonal content kind of deal.
Yeah.
What they fucking gave us, what they delivered to their community, and someone had to okay this, was Season 1's changes were nerfs. Across the board. Unanimously. Nerfs. Just nerfs. Just all nerfs. They reduced your damage, they reduced your durability, they reduced your fucking speed at which you could use abilities. Those things that they decided arbitrarily to put fucking 30-second cooldowns on, and then they just limit your access to cooldown reduction. And then they just increased mob health, so the game just got slower. All they did was just make their game sluggish. That was it. And their seasonal mechanic, quote unquote, is there is a mob. There's a blighted mob, so a special kind of elite that you kill, and it drops this heart, and you click on it, and the mob respawns in 5 seconds, so you kill it again, and you pick up these unique jewels that you put into your rings and your amulet. And some of them do interesting things. That's it. That's the whole fucking mechanic. I just described it in 4 sentences. That's the whole goddamn mechanic. And the quest line they introduced with it is stupid. It's really stupid. It's like you're talking to this dude with survivor's guilt, which, like, in another game setting might be okay, but it's in Diablo? Which I'm like, dude, this land is like it's the epitome of survival of the fittest. Like, what are we on about? Like, Diablo's land is a hellscape. I think Diablo's would be the worst universe to live in. Hands down.
That tracks.
The place is a nightmare. Like, if you're not a fucking Nephilim or an angel or something, be just some bog standard fucking baker. Dude, you're dying. Like, you hide in your house and pray. That's your evening. It's a whole fucking night. Like, so it's just, it doesn't feel good. It feels really lazy. The fact that they just took away power with no compensatory buffs or changes or anything. And it's the exact same game. Like, their seasonal content offers you 30 minutes of additional activities. I don't even think I'm being hyperbolic on that front. I think you could actually quick blitz the quest line in 30 minutes. And
sounds like fun.
Get the gems that you wanted maybe in an hour of target farming. Maybe. Like, it's really easy. It's really sad. And they did nothing to address some of people's primary complaints with shit and, like, wants for quality of life. Like the fact that you can't search in your fucking stash. There isn't, like, a search feature because it's a console-first game.
They need you to spend some time just digging through there.
Yeah, it's also the fact that with their this one is the one that, like, pissed off a lot of people for very good reason. The battle pass you could buy gave you 666 platinum, which is like their kind of in-game store, or like store currency, right? Which it's 666 devil. Kind of funny. Except when you consider that the cheapest item is 800 platinum. Which
I would like to give you 99 cents.
Yeah, like, go fuck yourself, Blizzard. It's embarrassing. So all it's done is create this fucking itch for me for a good ARPG. So I'm just like, Pee-wee, come on, let's go.
Quick, Path of Exile to the rescue.
Yeah, Path of Exile. It owns a lot of my life. So thankfully, I've also been playing some Baldur's Gate. I'll talk more about that. It slaps.
Before we move on to talking about other things, I was going to say, since you brought up villainy of a sort, that so nicely ties into our
our talking
Topic
points.
this week. What we breaking down for the peeps, bruh?
We are talking about that horrible bias that heroes get, where they're always the ones that are in the right. What about when villains have a good point? There's kind of two brands of villainy. Like, you have almost the kind of cartoonish megalomaniac evil. These are your people like Sauron, for example, where it's like, nah, they just bad. And
Bad
which
to
is
the bone.
Yeah, like which for lore and whatnot, totally legitimate. Like, I got no beef against it. Not necessarily the most interesting, you know, drive for a villain, but it doesn't have to be. There's plenty of ways to supplement it. But there are plenty of villains who, if you stop and think about it, they got a point. Maybe they're not as bad as we think? Question mark? So we thought it'd be interesting to go in and look at a bunch of them and kind of talk about why they had a very valid point and whether or not they should have been listened to.
First up, I'm going to lead off with good old Stinky Pete from Toy Story 2. So, Stinky Pete, the surprise villain. Oh no! Spoilers!
From a movie,
Maybe
from
like
12 years ago.
Yeah.
Or actually much longer. Did Toy Story 2 come out?
I think it is like close to 20.
Came out in 1999. It is 24 years old.
Hot damn! It can nearly... Or no, wait. There's something... Oh, it can nearly rent a car. There we go. You have to be 25.
Can rent a car.
No, you have to be 25.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Last I checked, I don't know. They might have...
That's fair.
They might
Yeah,
have
no, you're right. You're right.
their
I don't know,
brain.
My brain lumped in with 21, and that's not right.
No. Oh, it's been drinking for a while now. So, before Stinky Pete got drunk, he was making the claim, and correctly so at the end of Toy Story 2, that children destroy toys. To wit, the toys, go, yeah, but it's worth it because love and all that. And Woody and co. aren't wrong. And I would also argue that Stinky Pete's, excited, goal in the movie is kind of whack as shit. Because he wants to be put behind glass to be stared at forever, which sounds like prison. But, live your best life, I guess? But all this aside, they don't ever really talk about his point at all. They just kind of, yeah, but it's worth it. It's like, we're eternal.
I mean,
we could go live somewhere forever and, basically, as long as upkeep, we're going to last forever. And some of you are plastic. You're going to literally last forever.
yeah.
You're not going to biodegrade anytime soon. It's
Sorry, I mean, the big... It's like a difference in moral philosophy between him and Woody.
Mm-hmm.
And either is wrong. It's his point is that, Andy will eventually discard you. Andy's not going to take you to college. Andy's not going to, you're not going to be with Andy forever.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that there's a difference between choosing to live in the moment and appreciate the moment versus trying to plan for the inevitable future.
Yeah.
And Woody is absolutely right too. He says, "You're right." And he even acknowledges, "You're right, Prospector. He won't keep me forever, but I wouldn't miss it for the world."
Yeah. No, I'm not talking so much about that bit, although I think that is a very good bit. He literally says to them at one point, in a moment of panic and anger because they won't listen to him, he goes, "Children destroy toys." And it's just a fact.
Yeah.
By playing with them, there is almost no way to play with anything in this world, especially a toy that is made of matter, without degrading it some amount.
Yeah.
And that's a very real point that he puts up and doesn't really get talked about because it's a fucking kids movie. And I think there are good ramifications of why you should, my co-host was saying, live in the moment, love, experience life, and die as opposed to try to hold on to every little bit of existence and frailty. I think that is foolish. But that is it's a very understandable and hard to, argue notion that they don't talk about, which is, yeah, you're embracing destruction.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's
whoa!
kind of interesting that's kind of echoed in Toy Story 3 a little bit.
Yeah.
With with Lotso, he says we're all just trash waiting to be thrown away.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Well, before we get too melancholy about little toys and dolls, perhaps we should move on to the next one. What you got?
Let's talk about expectations.
Great Expectations!
Everyone's favorite, not that one. No, stop it. So the first point and the very easy or parental expectation tie-in is Tai Lung from Kung Fu Panda. Who the assumption was that Tai Lung was supposed to be the special one. He was supposed to be the Dragon Warrior. He was the best, he was the brightest, he was the most dedicated. It kinda snapped when he was denied what he'd worked so hard for because
and what he'd been led to believe he deserved.
Yes. And what him and Shifu and presumably other people believed he was gonna get. Because I mean, he was the fucking grade A student. I mean, he whooped the other four, no problem. Yeah. Fucking took him to Pound Town. It's a beast. But there was this sense of almost especially when he confronts Master Shifu, which I can't stop giggling at that name because Shifu in Mandarin is just master or teacher.
So master.
Yeah, exactly.
Another udon noodle situation, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Where, he's. I need to see it. It's been so long since I've seen it, but I know it's like a kid coming home and being angry at his parent for lying to him.
Yeah.
And just he's so eclipsed by rage at that point. All he can think is, I don't want to hear it anymore. Just give me my scroll.
Yeah.
And it's expectations are a dangerous thing, and the idea that you should be something is that is an insidious lie.
Yeah.
And it's so and there's so many people you can see it even just day to day where they think they should be something or they should get something or they should. So one of the things at the center for basically a place for mental rehab is that should is really not something you should say. Should is a bad word. Because should is where you can put goalposts that can get moved, or should is where you can be disappointed unnecessarily. And so expectations, especially when they're put on you by other people, become very insidious. Especially when it's kind of a parental expectation.
Yeah, especially when it's a parent and it's a non-adult.
Yeah.
All of those things have really bad implications.
Yeah, and so it's them saying you're special is you want them to be right. And when something goes awry in that plan, it twists that narrative and it really messes with it. It leads it to a very dark place, which is where the other tie-in with Syndrome kind of comes in. Syndrome wanted to be special and got told he wasn't. He was normal. Got told he wasn't good enough, basically.
Yep.
Except he really was. The underspoken thing in that movie is that Syndrome is the greatest arms creator ever.
Yeah.
Hands down. So in many ways, he's more exceptional than Mr. Incredible could ever be. There's other people who are super strong. There are not other people who use 0-point energy gloves.
Yeah, exactly.
There are not many other people making fucking rocket boots and shit. I can fly. Can you fly? But he couldn't get past that narrative where there was expectations he couldn't fill. And so he sought to just annihilate them entirely. Instead of Tai Lung, who wanted to just prove that he was the expectation, that What was expected was what was delivered. He was special. He was the Dragon Warrior. Fuck you for telling me otherwise. Syndrome wanted to go the other way with it and just go, you're going to tell me I'm not special? No one gets to be.
Yeah.
You're going to tell me I'm not good enough? No one will be when I'm done.
Well, it's not even that no one will be. It's not he's taking away powers. He's giving everyone's powers and balancing out. So he's giving everybody the opportunity to be special at the way we currently commodify it.
He is removing that sense of elitism.
Yeah, he's bringing the floor to the ceiling.
Yes, he is making it equal. I mean, and no matter which way you parse it, whether he took powers away or is giving them to everybody, nobody is special.
Yeah.
No more of this. You're special. No, you're not.
It's not no special. It's no longer different.
Yeah.
It removes that. It removes the asterisk. It removes the exclamation part. And it removes the difference.
Clarity. It's nobody. No one is super. When everyone's super, no one will be. It removes that sense of being exceptional.
Yeah, it removes that difference.
Yes. Which also, I'm 1,000% sure that motivation and that line was written by somebody who had apparently always telling them, "You're special just the way you are." Just like, no, don't say that. It's terrible.
It's a great notion, but a terrible thing to be told. To be sure.
Yeah,
it's definitely that is one of the things. Hopefully, that comes out of our generation is that some people go deep into the fucking psychology well and come up with a book of these are things that you can tell your kids that'll be positive and helpful to them at the same time.
I mean, small note personally. I've talked with Mom, and she's like, "That was a shit deal we tried to give you guys."
Yep.
Yeah, she's like, she fully admits. She's like, "No, it was terrible."
But they didn't and very much to our parents or anybody that's listening.
It wasn't deliberate.
Every parent that did that at that time did that without malice of forethought, and they very much were trying and copying what the in quote good parents of that generation were doing.
Yeah.
And they didn't know any better. And there's a Patton Oswalt bit that he's talking to his mom about raising his daughter and came to the realization, or she said, every parent fucks up their child. They don't mean to, or at least a lot of them don't. Some of them do, in which fuck yourself.
Some of them are monsters. They can go die.
Yeah. But a lot are trying to give them better than they had, and they often do actually give them better than what they had. But the problem is they don't give them good things. They just give them less poisonous things. They don't realize that, and that's no fault of their own. It's just part of what humans do when they raise each other. And, we're still working with imperfect science, as we always will. But it's,
parenting is, I think Mom said this actually, it's like parenting is trying to mess up your kid as little as possible.
Yeah.
Just like, wow.
It's impossible. It's the Kobayashi Maru. That's what parenting is. You can never win. All you can do is lose less.
Yeah. Anyways, before this is a rabbit hole we could go on for about 9 hours. Let's
that's
back
another
on
episode.
Target. Stay on target.
That's another episode entirely. So next up, we've got Ernesto de la Cruz from Coco, which fantastic about face villainy. Pixar does it again. Awesome. And he has this great quote that is very emblematic, which is, to make it to the top, you have to do whatever it takes and seize your moment. So much of life. I mean, I'm living here in Los Angeles. So much of talking to people that are trying to make it, so much of listening to people who have made it. You really can't leave any stone unturned. You really can't take a day off until you've gone platinum. You really have to put every fiber of your soul into it to make it to what is currently, societally speaking, monetarily speaking, the top to success. You really can't ever back down. You really can't ever stop trying to re-innovate yourself. Before this podcast started, we were looking at how many people are financially successful from YouTube. It's probably the best way to typify it without getting into the weeds.
Yeah.
And we found that currently on YouTube, there are 24,000 channels that have 100,000 subscribers or more. And at that much, the ad revenue from YouTube is guesstimated to be somewhere between $2,400 and $4,000 a month. Which, depending upon who you are listening to this, that sounds either like a lot or a little. But that is like a decent job. Not a great job, but like a decent, a passable job currently in the United States. That will pay for most things. And there's only 24,000 of them ever. Not even now, ever. There's some channels that have that many subscribers, they're not even like really making videos anymore. One of my favorite channels actually has, I think, 1 million subscribers. I think it has 1 million subscribers. Oh, now I need to check. But I don't think it's made I don't think it's made a single film in a while. Every Frame of Painting. Every Frame of Painting has 2 million subscribers, and they haven't made a movie. They haven't made a thing in 6 years. So there are YouTube things out here. There are people like clogging the algorithm.
They're corpses in the numbers.
There's corpses.
Those are not current producing channels. That's just ever. Period.
Yeah.
There's also some of those I'd point out that are probably secondary channels for large people with large platforms.
Yeah.
So like some of that number gets cut out at the knees.
Yeah.
You're sort of it's tying back to one large person or personality.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah. It's so fucking hard. So to see this guy, and now it makes sense why, we look at Ernesto de la Cruz in that movie and we're like, oh, he stole this man's music to, make fame. It's like...
I mean, he did.
He did. No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not like trying to like make it okay, but it's like, it makes sense. If you want that, and like, then you look at Hollywood and you look at, Instagram or TikTok and you look at these people and you're like, oh, it's like, yeah, they wanted it bad enough. They were willing to do whatever it took. Is that okay? No. Does it make sense? Yes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Villainy has roots, and they aren't always, and I think very infrequently, truly villainous. I think they started from a place of wanting to accomplish something, do something, whether, good or, neutral. But like, when somebody's starting out and they want to be a professional musician, they're not thinking of doing anything villainous. But when the chips are down and you want it bad enough, did they really make that song or did they steal it? Did they really, there's a lot of these things that start to blur, and you got to understand why.
Even looking past that, thinking about like aspiring artists and stuff, and it's like, okay, what, there's a chance that like by taking extra time for production, for touring, for whatever, what are you neglecting to? So it's like, depending on perspective, you neglecting, a spouse is going to either a kid because you want to make it could be viewed as kind of villainous. Just to spin that a little bit.
No, absolutely. Well, before we spin
go down
too
that
long,
rabbit hole, Jesus.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to introduce that.
No, it was great, dude.
It's so. Because what is this show without finding an excuse to talk about Arcane? Silco. One of the best things that Arcane did for all its characters, they have motivations you understand. Silco included. Like, and not just early days Silco, but like throughout the whole damn show. She kind of gets multiple reasons for why he's doing what he's doing, which I like. But the big one that stands out to me for this is, like, him making Shimmer and basically running a gang and whatnot is he's trying to make it better for the why am I it's not Undersiders, it's down making it better for Zahn.
Yeah.
For the Undercity. Because like I think it's said best at like the start of the second act as he's looking at the hex gates. He just goes, every day they get further ahead of us, and just lamenting how shit it is that he's watching their their fancy, sparkly fucking city, while they're still living in muck.
Yeah.
And so it's like, when you're living next door to that shit, and they're doing things like blockading the bridge so you can't walk over, when they're, demanding you have a fucking passport to even visit your neighbors, when, they have cops from their city coming in and cracking down on you. Of course you hate them. Like, they're dicks. Like, of course you fucking do shit to level the playing field. Of course you cut corners and you do some criminal bullshit because you're tired of being oppressed. Of course. Like, it makes so much sense. He is trying to make things better for his home. He's trying to make things better for people. Is he doing it in a terrible fashion? Absolutely. Like, he is stirring the pot in a way that Vander wouldn't, because Vander valued peace.
Yep.
Silco says, no, we're not changing enough. We're not catching up. We're going to try.
I mean, but even then, in the latter half of season 1, you see the way, like in season 1, in the early parts of season 1, spoilers, he has no problem killing cops.
Yeah.
In the latter part of season 1, when Jinx kills some cops, he freaks out because he now, as being responsible for the whole entire area and seeing it, he does want what's best, and he realizes that's not what's best for the Undercity.
Yeah, it's too much heat. It's too big
much
a
heat,
problem.
and like
it's
they got it the way they want it, and so it really is from this tribalism standpoint of, I want to take care of my people. How can I take care of my people? And that's the way he sees it. Once in power. Before he's in power, kind of like villainy grab shit. But once he gets in power and sees what responsibility means and the ramifications of it, it
does. It absolutely changes his viewpoint.
Yeah, it's a distorted, like, governor kind of mentality.
Yeah, like it's again, it's like how he's going about it is not great. But
and I mean, I think that's by and large what you're going to see in basically if you look back at the previous ones, what we said, and the ones moving forward.
Yeah.
Every single one of these, it's the way they go about it, not what they're doing.
The ends make sense. It's the means they're taking to get there that you go, yeah, I don't know about that one, Chief.
Yeah. Sometimes the ends, as we'll see in the next one, doesn't make sense, but it's the general mindset. It's the idea. It's the kind of initial idea was in the right place. It was just the trajectory got kind of muddied.
Yeah.
Speaking of insane, did somebody say crazy? Next up, we've got Tyler Durden.
Did someone say multiple personality disorder? Or dissociative identity disorder? Ayo.
It's just the voices in your head. So, Tyler Durden has probably one of the best, most applicable kind of call-outs I think I've ever seen of a movie villain to have when it comes to a person watching. In that, like, he's got that great, you're not your fucking khakis, you're not your bank account, you're not your IKEA coffee end table or whatever. Like,
I'll look it up.
It's fucking amazing. But just this idea of our social expectations, like kind of like what we were talking about earlier, we were all raised to believe we could be rock stars and astronauts, but we're slowly learning fucking can't, and we're angry about it.
I got it. You were not your job. You were not how much money you have in the bank. You were not the car you drive. You're not the contents of your wallet. You were not your fucking khakis. You were the all-singing, all-dancing crap of the world.
And I didn't fully understand it at the time, and I think a lot of people still don't, not to be all high and mighty or anything like that, but so much of what the good, anyway, and what Tyler's trying to propagate is that so often in our society we are told, via advertising especially, and that's kind of like one of the things that you're trying to point out a lot, and also by other people in society, of like what equals success and what we should strive for. You should strive to have a house and white picket fence and all this money and 2 children, a wife, a dog. It's like lots of people don't want that, and that's fine. And the people that do want that, that's also fine. But this idea of being told that if you have that, you're successful, and if you don't, you're not, is just violently untrue.
And I think the other part of it is the notion of how much shit we're peddled. Like one of the things that stands out to me in the movie is like, why do we know what a duvet is? From a survivor, from a hunter-gatherer standpoint, why do I give a shit about a duvet? Like Tyler Durden's radical point is the idea that we don't need things.
Yeah.
Which is true. And like, especially, it's egregious in the United States, how much shit is pushed at us and told, you need this, you need this, you need this, you need this. Beyond just a thought of what success is supposed to mean, there's just so much material dreck that we get that is meaningless.
You gotta have it.
Yeah, you gotta get it, you gotta have it. And so, he's the one that went, no, I don't.
And then he went, no, you don't, which is where the problem is. If he had ended the movie, like, the movie turns into a wholesome thing if Tyler Durden was a real person and not, the main character.
A violent dissociative identity in the head of someone else. Yeah.
And if he hadn't, felt the need to propagate everybody else having his same outlook, which is where the, the kind of the villainy enters in.
Yeah.
Speaking of other things entering in.
So, gonna talk about Doug Judy.
Judy.
Because it got a shoehorn in a Brooklyn Nine-Nine reference too. And, just check the box. If you got the bingo card, I'm hooking you up. But so one of the while some people are not a big fan of the last season of Brooklyn Nine-Nine because it had to get aggressively political in some ways. Sad, but true. The last episode with Doug Judy, to tie up his story, brings up a very interesting point about why he got into this mess and how he ended up getting into the kind of frenemy territory with Jake. And it's because he didn't have a choice but to be a criminal.
Yeah.
When he was younger, he did something stupid, and his life was forever fucked by it. And so that despite being straight-laced later in life after being given a second chance by Jake and by the 9-9, he's still dealing with complications and consequences of things from when he was young and dumb. And so when he basically sets up an escape attempt for prison, because he's like, yeah, I don't want to go to prison. It sucks. I didn't want to be a criminal, and I'd finally gotten out, except they're going to throw me to prison for something I did 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to deal with that shit. Like, it's not good enough to prove that I'm good now. Doesn't matter. They're going to throw me in prison. And I'm not taking that. And it's like, he's got a point. Like, it's enough that Jake lets him out and like gives him a way out of his cuffs. But like, and anecdotally, having tried to help and work with people who have been like arrested and have felony charges, dude, you get fucked.
Yep.
Like, most jobs, hard no. Most places to rent, most houses to buy, hard no. Most everything, they see a felony charge, they don't care if it's violent.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. It's just, felony. We don't work with felons. Fucking get that shit out of here. Like, they're treated like garbage. Literally. Like, they are thrown to the curb. Like, that is... It's a system that continues to punish you once you're out. And so it makes perfect sense that Doug Judy does not want to go in, or that he had to alter his life to be a criminal once it was forever stained. Like, and that one is unfortunately more than just a fictional point. Like, that one's got some real world implications.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say on that one.
So, as you'll notice, as we're getting farther down this list, the The villains are getting right about a little bit more serious and hard-hitting shit.
Yeah, it's taken a rough turn pretty quick towards the end here.
So buckle up. These last three,
They gonna
kind
be
of
rough.
deep dags. So next up, we've got a coalition of Magneto and Killmonger with their kind of they're very much parroting of Malcolm X's point, which is humans and or white people want to kill us, whether it be mutants or black people. Interesting how there's that correlation somehow. It's like it was meant to be written that way.
Oh wait,
Oh, it
it
totally
was.
Yeah. So,
Thank you, Stanley.
yeah,
R.I.P.
yeah. Very much Magneto and Killmonger to the MCU extent. I don't think Killmonger's like this in the comic books, but in the MCU he is. And Magneto is in the MCU and in the comics. That very much humans want us, either black people or mutants, dead. And
Yeah.
it's a war. And, time to pick a side and time to fight. They're not wrong. That is very much in their universe and in real life, that especially at the time and just in general. Yep.
Yeah. Like, now, I'm gonna say, to be fair to Magneto, like, and this is one of those things that is, God, fingers crossed, changing, especially in this country, God willing. Like, but it's, especially when I think Magneto as a character was created in, like, 1975 or something.
Let me look.
And, I mean, racial equality was kind of a joke back then.
1963.
1963. Oh shit, even worse. Yeah, right. The notion of racial equality,
Not a thing.
not a thing. And so, like it made, and yeah, like you're trying to argue against you can argue against that the methods Malcolm X went to try and create parody were not the good methods. You really can't argue with why the fuck he was doing it, though.
For instance, I'm going to pull up some fun facts while this is going on. It wasn't until June 12th, 1967, that you could legally marry a black woman or vice versa.
Yeah, 60 years ago, my marriage is illegal.
60 years ago, marriage was legal. 4 years after Magneto came out, interracial marriage was legal. Before then, it was illegal. There were fines to be paid, prison to go to, judges to be seen.
Yeah. I mean, Killmonger is the more modern narrative, especially around like police brutality in the United States.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, that's another hard one to argue because it's very, very real. Like, I mean, I think black people make up 12% of the United States population.
Something like that. Yeah.
But for some reason, they have 300% the arrest rate of white people or something like that. Like, egregiously more arrest rate than white people. Those numbers don't stack.
So, incarceration by race, there are twice as many African Americans incarcerated. And this is 2010. Then
Sure.
the next group down, heads up, that's not white. Nationwide, in 800 districts or in jurisdictions, black people are arrested at least 5 times higher than white people.
Yeah, okay. So, as of 2021 in the United States, white people represent about 60% of the population. Black
Yep.
people are about 12.5.
Okay, so it's a 5 times differential, and then it works in the opposite way.
Yeah, so it's effectively, if you're black, you have 1,000% the rate of incarceration as white people.
Whee!
Yeah. And that's not that's just incarceration. That's not counting any kind of looks toward police brutality or lethality, even.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's, so it's like when you start looking at that shit, yeah. And this is one of the big reasons that, like, when Artemis says, I don't like being a black person in this country, I shut the fuck up. Because yeah, that's 1,000% difference. That is a 10x difference. That's not a margin of error. That's huge. That feels deliberate. That feels suppressive.
I
That
wouldn't be
feels
surprised if
persecutory.
it was actually 25 times. Did you see the number 1,000? Because there's 5 times as many white people as black people, and then the black population is 5 times as likely to be arrested. Wouldn't that be 25 times?
Yes, it would. How did I get 10? Okay. So yeah,
You just add them
I'm sorry.
together.
Even more so.
Yeah.
Um,
But wait, it's worse.
yeah, like I mean that's preposterous. Like that's persecution. That's what that is.
Yeah.
Like
So when the black population goes fucking to arms, to war, this is war, this, fight the power, it's like they're not being crazy.
yeah, like
That's just
the
the way
the math
it is.
isn't lying.
Yeah.
Like the math says, not black people are getting messed over, left, right, and center. Full stop. Like I don't care, even if black people were committing crimes at 2 times the rate of white people, which I find dubious because I've known a lot of shitty white people too.
Raises his hand in solidarity.
Yeah, like even power. Even if that was the case, from a mathematical standpoint, so if you did it out of 100 people, and if you said 5%, like if you've got 100 criminals or something, roughly, right?
Yeah.
Even if you had the expected percentage for white people, 58 or 59 of those 100 criminals would be white. And if you had double rate for black people, you'd have about 25. You would still have a 2-to-1 number for white to black people in incarceration and arrest. Even if there was truly double the amount of criminal activity amongst black people as compared to white people. That's, and somehow we're getting a 25 times discrepancy. It's crazy.
Imagine, if you will, pulling out a 100-sided die, making this a little easier to visualize, and saying that there are 4 pips on the die where Whitey goes to jail, and the other 96, your black buddy gets in the squad car.
We're hitting Tyrone up.
Yeah, it's just like those numbers. You'd be like, yeah, all right, I'll roll that die.
Yeah,
it's bullshit.
Yeah, as much as I do, Louis C.K., I'm the best standing. There is something to be said about being white. Clearly better.
No, it's busted.
Yeah, that's
you won the lot. You win.
Any black guy in a time machine. Nothing before 1980, please.
Arguably nothing before 2020.
Yeah.
It's better. Each day is better, but it's still not good.
Yeah, it's
still batting. You're still batting really badly.
It's still outrageous. But anyways,
it gets worse.
Wait. We can do one better. Let's talk about Thanos. Let's talk about snapping people out of existence. Let's talk about global food crises and the fact that we're barreling towards one. Let's talk about... Okay, let's brace yourself for some fucking existential dread here, people. So, biodiversity in a lot of the world has gone down by about 50% because we have made it uninhabitable.
Whee!
Because we have polluted, destroyed a lot of natural habitat for a lot of things. Like, notice that if you're driving, you don't hit bugs anymore.
Interesting. I hadn't even picked up on that.
Yep. But you think about it, when's the last time something splattered on your windshield?
That's pretty rare, yeah.
Yeah. There's a reason for that. Us. we are what I heard and what has fucking chilled me to my bones. We are using up about a planet and a half of resources and not giving it time to regenerate. So we are killing reserves. Like, we have used so much water out of aquifers that we have slightly changed the axis of the Earth. Does that mean anything substantial? No, not really, in terms of, like, weather and whatnot. But it's really fucking frightening to think about the fact that we have fucked with the Earth so hard, we have changed how it sits. Like, I mean, you start looking at, like, lakes and stuff, we're draining them. We are barreling towards a state where we cannot feed the people we have. We are barreling towards a state where the planet cannot sustain the people that are sitting on it. And so when you start looking at somebody like Thanos, who goes, they're all going to die. And his rationale is that if you just let things go uninterrupted, the exponential curve of population growth will lead to a point where resources cannot catch up.
Yeah.
We are going to eclipse the surface area. Like, there is a ceiling on this thing where food will no longer catch up.
Yeah.
And when that happens, shit goes out the window. Law and order, fuck that shit. When people need to eat, when people are hungry, when the chips are down, people will eat each other.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's like, what do you do for forests? Forests do controlled fires all the time. You gotta burn it so it can't get out of hand. Burn it early so it can't be too big to lose control. That's Thanos' proposition, is basically burn it ahead of time. This way, it can't all go to shit. Burn it early. Burn it now. It's controlled. He's not wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we literally do that. We've controlled fires all the time. That's something you do to prevent huge-scale forest fires. And, like, it's just true. And I mean, the other kind of example from a social perspective is like Ozymandias. It's a controlled forest fire. Because we've created these weapons that can wipe everything out. And granted, Watchmen was made to parrot some of the Cold War and the crazy paranoia that happened in that time, right? When people are like, the world's going to end tomorrow. And to a degree, we get some of that again. We get a fucking, Cold War II electric boogaloo with fucking Russia and Ukraine and goddamn crazy pants Putin.
Crazy pants Putin.
Like, threatening to fucking press the big red button. And it's like, so we're back. It's like, hopefully that never happens. But there's a chance. Like, it's not a high chance, I don't think. I hope. I don't know. I don't want to know. But it's not impossible. Like, they got nukes. We know that. For certain. They have nukes. And, like, if that shit goes up, holy fuck. Like, and so there's just this literally apocalyptic planetary dread in either of these because we've been left to our own devices. So someone says, I'm going to take care of it for you.
Yep.
I'm going to stop you from killing yourself. I'm going to stop you from doing worse. So you're going to deal with this evil. Yeah, I'm going to save you from yourself.
Well, I'm not necessarily you. I'm going to save most of you.
Yeah.
And the only way that I see how.
Yes. And it's this grim, blood-soaked calculus where I'm going to do this bit of damage so that the rest of you can flourish. And here's a really funny historical precedent that shows he's right. The Black Death in Europe fucking wrecked people. But do you know what happened in the wake of it? Quality of life got so much better.
Wait, did after the Black Plague, is that when we got the Renaissance?
Yes, but like not for 100 years, I think. So I don't know that was an immediate consequence. But like rates of starvation go down. Um, like rates, I think like there's some kind of track of rate of crime goes down. Like the general quality of life for your average person in Europe after the Black Death gets so much better because there isn't this crazy crowding, because there is space, because there is suddenly way less mouths to eat the food. It works. Overpopulation fucking destroys things.
So what I'm seeing here is that actually right after the Black Plague, the Renaissance basically started in the like that period.
Hmm. I thought it was a little longer. Maybe I'm mixing up years. I must be mixing up years.
So it brief Google, Black Death endpoint was 1353, and then the Renaissance started in the 1300s.
Oh, I thought the Renaissance was in like the. I thought the Renaissance was in the 1400s, like 1450 or so.
I think it probably just went that long, maybe? So it's saying the 4th century. Its first experience been in the 14th century. Almost, the Renaissance is generally considered to have started in Florence, Italy, around the years 1350 to 1400.
Hmm.
So literally, the end of the Black Death in Italy is when it starts.
Gotcha.
Assuming that is correct. Which is fucking wild. But I mean, it like speaks more to your point of just like, after it's, when the underbrush, for terrible metaphor, has been cleared out, you have the ability to flourish. You have that, you have that room necessary.
Yeah.
Obviously that isn't, apples to apples when it comes to humanity, but there isn't no data that supports this. Not that we are suggesting that Thanos was right, although that is a hell of a hashtag. But
I mean, it's a subreddit too. I love it. But yeah, it's the idea of taking ownership of an evil to prevent it from getting worse. Like, Ozymandias just does the same kind of thing as a social mechanism, as opposed to like the idea of food shortage and famine. Just, I'm gonna stop you from killing yourselves. New York's gonna be the casualty.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fucking hit it with an Afro alien. This is not what he does in the movies, but it's what he does in the comics. It looks kind of silly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
well, if you thought there was nothing that could top that just nugget of delightful wisdom to live with, let me introduce you to Ultron, Mr. Smith, and oddly enough, David Attenborough.
it's the primeval, the greatest baddie of all time.
The 3 fucking horsemen of the apocalypse. And in their summation, 2 of which comical, or at least fictional.
Over the top, maybe.
And one of which just what he said, humanity is a plague on the earth. I will include the link to this, but David Attenborough said this in a NBC interview and made some other more just dagger points. But he's not wrong. If you look at most every single bit of fiction, bit of storytelling, historical event, we are the evil. We create our own evils that come back to us. You see that with the way we overthrow dictators and do all this stuff, and we like to kind of bundle it up and package it so that we're the good guys. But if you look back, for instance, at I think it's like the 60s or 70s in the Middle East, I think in Iran, I could show you pictures and you would think I was showing you pictures of California. It's women bathing on the beach in bikinis, having a good old time. This era they lived in now was helpfully created by us. This is not something that they, reverted back to or were always. There's so much of our own hands in our own unmaking. You look at, climate change. That's us. The world isn't being like, fuck you guys. We were like, fuck you to the world. And the world was like, really? And just came hard at us. These are all products of our own making that are destroying us. And sometimes just us destroying us. We are the number one killer of ourselves, to be sure.
Yeah, like as much as much damage as like sickness, illness, and things like that can do, we can match it with firearms, drunk driving, you know, like we kill we kill people all the time. Like as
We're
brutal
really
as
good at it.
nature is, like we do as much damage to ourselves. We are our own worst enemy. Like Jesus Christ. Anecdotally, working at a homeless shelter, the shit I hear that people would do to one another is outrageous. It's crazy. Like the shit I listen to people that they had to endure or that they endured in places that were supposed to be safe, that, people just robbing them while they were sleeping. One guy I talked to woke up with someone like knee on his chest, putting a knife to his face. Like, you know, people are animals. Like, people are animals and can be evil. Like, there's, we have the, some people have the propensity to be good and the propensity to be decent, but like, everybody can be fucking evil.
Yeah.
And there's enough of us that there's a lot of bad shit that happens.
And kind of, back to the earlier point, that the whole homeless situation you're talking about very much goes back to, the Ozymandias Thanos thing of like saving, like people need room.
Yeah.
And it's with all this overcrowding, like that is what you end up with. When food is scarce, they start to eat each other. They start to do horrible acts. Humanity is a beautiful and very fickle thing. It has the ability to be the most beautiful thing in the world, but so often and so easily is the most evil.
Yeah. Free will goes both ways.
Yep. And we're going to use our free will to go to an ad break.
Yeah, I suppose there was no clean getaway from this one. Do you enjoy glorifying serial killers and worshiping crime in all its forms? What? No, of course not. But do you? Don't worry. You're not alone. There are tons of people who get a thrill hearing about the horrible, wacky, and sadistic things that the worst of us will do to one another. And thanks to the forced incarceration of the world during COVID, the desire for true crime documentaries has only ballooned into a social phenomenon rivaled only by the MCU. And whether you want to look at crimes gone wrong, bank robberies gone sideways, or just some of the truly awful and twisted and sadistic things from the minds of Ted Bundy and the like, you can be sure that you'll find someone to narrate it at you in a pace that is just too slow for normal conversation. What are you waiting for? Find your correct criminal today.
We're back from outer space.
Just walked in to find you with that look upon your face. Anyway.
Should I change that stupid voice?
Anyways.
I believe we have some announcements to make before we go on to our regularly scheduled programming.
About that, we're changing our regularly scheduled programming.
Whoa! Not dates and times, just the content there within.
Yeah, good clarification. So, one of the things we've done for a while is we have given a talk about something we're working on or want to work on. And we are going to do away with this for the foreseeable future. There's a couple reasons, and it's a part of the motivation for doing it is different between my co-host and I. So I guess I will list my reasons, and part of my rationale first is that it put an odd onus onto constantly churning up new ideas, which for me felt a little disingenuous at times. Like, it felt more like a box to be checked than something exciting to talk about necessarily. Because, like, especially when I was writing the same thing every week or editing the same thing every week, it felt odd to try and have to make my brain change gears and get out of thinking about one thing passionately to go, oh, I need to talk about something else different. And it felt a bit of a detractor for me for a kind of creative process. Like, not that it was completely soulless or drained the joy, but at a certain point it felt more obligatory than enjoyable, I guess is probably the best way I could put it.
And for myself, the reason I think this is going to be a good change moving forward is one of the things I've been having trouble with, and I will always consider myself a storyteller and a story creator, but I've been having a lot of trouble getting myself to sit down and write and do work. And I think one of the reasons, or one of the contributing factors, might be, like Eli was saying, thinking of all these different ideas and not just focusing on one. So much of success in a creative space, and just kind of in space in general, I'm realizing, is focusing on as few things as possible, not as many things as possible. Don't try to spread yourself too thin, but, rather concert your efforts in certain areas. So this idea of coming up with multiple different stories and working on these things, while good for your brain, it also is bad for your focus.
Yeah.
And also one of the things that it was doing for me, I think, was allowing me to feel creative without having done anything. Chatting of this idea instead of working on it. And so I'm hoping that in doing this, that'll give me more of a kind of, it might set my need for true creation to a boiling point where it gets me back down to the easel, gets me back in front of the page writing. We'll see, though. However, something that we're still going to continue to do is let you know of what our picks, or what we have watched
what you should
liked
avoid
or didn't like.
Yeah. Which
Do we have something we liked or didn't like this week, Bro Skinkowski?
do have something we liked this week.
Woo!
So before Artemis left, we watched the movie Megan together.
Ooh, bringing a third person in the relationship, I see. Nice.
No. She's a fucking 10-year-old. Stop. So Megan is a movie that is exactly what you think it is. It's a killer doll movie. They did, like, you could see an ad for it and be like, I know where this is going. You would be right. And that is absolutely A-okay. It is a well-made killer doll movie. It's like,
Woo!
You know what you're getting on the tin. It does take a little bit of time to kind of note towards how frightening the prospect of AI is. But what I think sets it apart is they do some really clever film fuckery with it.
Ooh, love me some film fuckery.
Yeah. So one of the things they do, there's a couple things that kind of leave you in this weird space, like, because it very much plays with the uncanny valley idea.
Mm-hmm.
So they have two things they do that make it really interesting. One is that for some long shots, they use an actual animatronic for Megan. So she walks robotically, literally, like it's a fucking robot. But for a lot of other scenes where she's like talking and interacting with people, they have a child actress wearing a silicone mask and silicone gloves, so the hands and face look like they belong to the android. But the movements are that of a gymnast and a dancer, because that's what this little girl can do. However, the face and the mouth don't quite match because of the silicone mask. So
wild. Yeah.
you're just like, what the fuck? Like, so it's like human movements, robot face. Wait a minute. Like, yeah, so
that
like
doll ain't right.
Yeah, and so at one point, like, she runs on all fours at somebody while having this, like, complete dead face because it's just a silicone mask. It's like, what the fuck? Like, yeah, and, like, it's got some pretty good humor to it. It's got, its visuals are pretty good. It's got some hilarious little, it's got a hilarious little fucking dance sequence that happens, which is outstanding. It's just good. Like, it knows what it's gonna be. You know what it's gonna be. Like,
and it nailed it.
Everything is the better for it not trying to be more than it should be.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's very fun, very enjoyable.
Well, speaking of things about dolls that are the way you wanted them to be, Barbie was dope. The only thing I would recommend if you go and see this movie is that you go in knowing that the whole entire story is a metaphor and not to take it literally. Because I think that's where a lot of the this movie's about anti-man and pro-famine, blah blah blah, woke, blah blah blah, blah. Like that's, I believe, where all that came from, is people taking it hyper literally. If you do not take this hyper literally,
It's also some wild insecurity from a lot of men, but that's another topic.
If you take it wildly literally, though, there are problematic elements to it from a male gaze. I understand that. The problem is the movie is a metaphor. Like at all points, it is trying to be a metaphor. If you don't get sucked into like trying to literally do it, like look at it as a literal story, then you'll be fine. Just like avoid that trap. That's something that I found myself occasionally doing. The second you pull yourself out of it, you'll love the movie. It's perfect. If you get sucked into that, you're going to find problems with it, which, you know, not invalid, but definitely not as valid as looking at it as a metaphor. Anyway.
It's a little bit missing
great.
The forest for the trees.
Yeah.
Okay.
Movie's great. Ryan Gosling. It's Ryan Gosling, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. Fucking... He was not wrong when he looked at... Apparently his recount of this was... read the script and said, I have to be in this movie. This is the best script I've ever read. I see that. It's fucking... It looks like so... He's got the line, "My job is beach," which, like... What? Need I say more? It's like, the movie is just a banger. And kudos to Mattel. They really let themselves... They took a big risk with letting Greta Gerwig, the writer and director, who is a BAMF, go where she wanted to go with it. They really like stepped out on a limb and they got rewarded. They allowed their IP to be kind of played with and them to be the butt of some jokes. That was very intelligent. I hope other businesses, Disney, will allow that to happen, even though I know the mouse is too proud to get out of his sandbox. But it's just, oh my gosh. That, and, you know, you have Margot Robbie being amazing per usual. It's just, it's Bang City. Would recommend 10 out of 10. You got any non-movie things that you've been enjoying lately?
I have been subsumed a bit by Baldur's Gate 3, the current gaming phenomenon that is making the world shit its pants a little bit. And I want to address this hilarious bit of controversy I heard recently, because I got to dunk on Blizzard a little more.
Woo!
A lot of game studios, like big AAA game studios, are like, you can't expect us to make shit like this. It's just unreasonable. Someone said, why not? Like, it clearly works. It's clearly profitable. It's, I don't know, we quick Google Baldur's Gate 3 units sold. Alright, it's been out a week. It sold 2.5 million copies.
It's pretty good. It has a pretty good numbers.
Yeah, and it's like a $70 game. Like, it's not cheap.
Yeah.
Like, fucking ching, you know? And
how long has this been in dev?
Good question. 3 development time. So supposedly it started development probably mid 2018.
Yeah, so a minute. Better part of 5 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, it was a long development time, and so a lot of studios have said, like, oh, we can't do this because they have a big studio and long development time. And so someone pointed out, hey, Alarian Studios has 400 employees over a couple campuses. Blizzard has 8,000 employees over a couple campuses. The development time of Diablo 4 was about 7 years.
Cost.
Bungie, the other one that he called out, Bungie has about 1,500 employees over a couple campuses, because Destiny 2 is gone to a shit spot and people hate it. So there's a lot of hope that Baldur's Gate 3 will be the kind of revolution for a lot of
AAA.
yeah, AAA, like, because the one good thing that has come out of AAA titles being lazy and cash grabs is that indie developers have fucking stepped up and bellied up to the bar and done better. Like, because we got shit like Risk of Rain 2, we got shit like Hades, we got shit like, you know, the two that leap to mind off a cuff that are made by tiny studios that are exceptional.
Yeah.
And
Hades, I think, has like less than 100 people.
Hades has like less than 50 people. I checked. It's got a staff of 25 people.
Yeah, it's like nobody.
Yeah, Supergiant is tiny. Like, Supergiant is tiny, and they made Hades on like a 4-year development cycle.
Yeah.
Like,
4-year development cycle with...
It can be done. Like,
4-year development cycle with like 40-hour max work weeks. They were not making them do...
They insisted their employees take 20 days off a year.
Yeah.
You're taking fucking 4 weeks. Get the fuck out of the office. Yeah. No. Like, it is this clear proof of what happens when you are passionate and what you enable passionate people to do their thing. It is...
Yep.
All the time I've spent playing Baldur's Gate, it's great. The combat is... Okay, the combat can be a little bit fucky at times. Like, some of the movement can be a little bit fucky, and the camera gets fucky when you start adding, like, verticality. But that's a pretty minor gripe, all things considered. The story is really good. The voice acting is pretty solid. There's some bizarre funny bits. Like, we walked in on a bugbear fucking an ogress. And so, being a barbarian, my response was to fucking point and laugh. I called his rutting puny and weak. Outstanding. Game of the year. Like, it's a lot of fun. Like, and there's a lot of clever shit you can do. There's a lot of miscellaneous side stuff that you could totally never find if you didn't go exploring. It's completely unnecessary. But it's there. You can find it. Like, we found, like, this Necronomicon thing the other night. There was, like, a tiny breadcrumb to go find it. But, like, it's not part of the main quest. It's completely optional. There's so much extra kind of love and attention and detail put in the game. It's just really good. It's really well done. Like, it's anecdotally playing it with friends has been a fuck ton of fun. Like,
isn't it kind of like every time I watch you play it, it kind of seems like the best version of D&D I've seen put into like a game.
I'll hit it with a caveat. Okay. It is an electronic game of D&D. That is what it is. 100%. It's using 5e rules, for God's sake. So I actually know some of them in advance. Like, one of our people is playing a monk and a rogue, and I'm like, I've played both those classes in 5e. I know how they work. So I could tell him before he starts respecing. So in a way, yes, because it's D&D that is facilitated faster. You do lose some of the interesting and personal story elements of D&D being a very personalized game. So you don't get like things like house rules and some of the fun kind of homebrewed shit that you can get in D&D, but you get it to run generally faster. So it's a bit of a trade-off, but I think that is not an invalid way of looking at the game. It's an electronic version of D&D, by and large.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, if that game isn't up to speed for y'all, I've got a song that hopefully will be. I don't know how I stumbled on this, but Switch by Big Pig. And when you spell Big Pig, put an extra I in between each B, G, P, and G. I don't know why. But it's just lovely. It's got a little bit of pep in its step and a lot of love in its heart. And that's all you need to know. I'd recommend giving a jam to it. If and when you're waiting for that game to download, or if that game doesn't sound like one you want to download. And unless you've got something more to say...
I do not.
Well, then I believe that's our episode. So, thank y'all for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this, please, feel free to...
like,
comment,
share,
and subscribe.
And don't forget that new episodes of Super Pros Bros come out the first and third Saturday of every month.
Bye.